Hello, DJ Coffee Talk viewers. Thank you very much for listening to my episode of the podcast and for checking out the creative portion. So, for this creative portion, instead of doing a DJ set, I wanted to dissect some of the aspects of my most popular song titled Orono. The song is titled after a small town in Maine that I was in at the time that I first wrote the initial demo for this actual song. And right now, I will play the original demo of the song that I made after about 6 hours or so in one sitting. From that demo to now, the song has changed quite a bit. The song was released in March or April, one of those months of 2020, and I did it with a vocalist named Anna Luther, who I went to college with. The first thing that I want to quickly dissect is the meaning behind the song. When I wrote this song, I had been traveling for about 4 months or so. That was 4 months out of almost an entire year that I traveled the Northeast United States and lived out of my car, which you probably heard a lot of in the actual talking portion of this podcast. And this song was created 4 months in when it was freezing cold in the town of Orono, Maine. And it was all about just being away from everyone that I knew and not knowing that things would be the same when I finally returned. And I sent a poem called, oh gosh, some New England winter poem to Anna, and she wrote the song based off of that poem. So now that you know the meaning, let's take a look at some of the cool sound effects that, if you know the song, you probably heard but didn't really know what they were. So there are some cool things here. So I don't know if you ever heard of singing ice, but basically when a lake is frozen, there are cracks that can happen within the frozen lake, and it sends these really cool sounds through the rest of the lake. And there's a recording of them that I used as the atmosphere in the first verse. So let's listen to some of that. So it almost sounds like laser guns in Star Wars. So I wanted to use the singing ice because I thought it would add a very frozen, cold sounding atmosphere to the song. And in the same vein, I also wanted to add risers and fallers and like impacts that were made out of ice breaking. So some of you can see my screen right now, some of you cannot. But if you can see my screen, then I've got this kind of conglomeration of all these different ice sounds. So if we play some of those, that's ice freezing. So in the first verse, you can hear that when Anna sings, "The winter froze us with doubt."
Winter froze us with doubt.
Big listen. Let's see this ice break, which for some reason isn't playing.
Winter froze us with doubt.
There we go. Okay, so you can barely hear it, but yeah, so I had all of those ice sounds in here so that the song would sound more cold and frozen. And then that main, like, lead sound that you hear, the intro, I call it the intro whistle. That sounds like this. It just sounded like snow to me. And that's what's playing behind the vocals in the verses. Alrighty then. So let's look at the chords and the melody. So in the chorus, right after the break, which features the sound of a thunderstorm, a thunderclap. Let's see if I can find that. Here it is. So it's thunder that happens right before the drop. And this kind of, if you're into music theory, this will interest you. I changed the time signature right before the drop. So the silent section leading up to the drop is actually 1 beat longer than every other measure, every other measure in the entire song. It just gave it a little more pause, and it built it up because I didn't really use like a snare drum to build everything up and a bunch of risers. It just kind of stops and then the chorus hits. So the extra time made the chorus feel like it was hitting harder. So in the chorus, I've got these layers of chords that I was inspired to create because of Vice Tone's song called Nevada. So I love this chord pattern, not necessarily the same chord progression, but the same chord pattern. And it sounds like this. So then the melody, which is a couple of layers. So there's, oh gosh, maybe there's more layers than I thought. So there's 4 layers playing this melody. And it sounds like this. So we can play some of those layers individually. You got that top layer. This horn, it's not actually a horn, but it sounds a lot like a horn. And then I put 1 layer of the synth pan all the way to the left. So if you're listening on headphones, you can hear that all the way to the left. And this other one, that's panned all the way to the right. So it's, those last 2 are pretty similar, but they're panned left and right so that it sounds wider to the listener. All right, so then one of the important things that I wanted to do in the song is I love having the final chorus being a little bit different, and I basically just rewrite the melody a little bit. So the final melody sounds like that, and I can play the chords at the same time. All the percussion's pretty simple, so I'm not going to go into how I did the percussion sounds. But the other part of the song that I want to look at are the vocals. So this is actually the first original song I did with vocals, and it's a miracle that the vocals came out as good as they did because I didn't know what I was doing.
I know our light has gone out.
So for these vocals, I drowned them in reverb and delay. But the way that I did it is I had the main vocal going into a delay and a reverb channel, and then I sidechained them. So every time the vocal came in, it kind of pushed away the reverb and pushed away the delay so that it wouldn't sound too messy. And when the vocal got quieter, the reverb and delay would swell back up. And so it sounds very dreamy without sounding drowned in all of these effects that I used. So in the verse also, I don't know if you heard, but I accidentally pitch corrected it to the wrong note.
The winter
right here.
Always wondered if you made your way back south.
But you know what? It kind of worked, so I'm not that mad about it. The other part of the vocal that I want to show you is the bridge. So originally, Anna sent over the chorus vocals, and it was 1 vocal for every chorus. But I wanted to have my instrumental drop in there because it sounded so icy. And so I took her chorus vocal and turned it into this final bridge vocal because it sounded so big and grand. And I also wanted to make it sound thicker because it was just 1 vocal track. And so I basically took that vocal, I put the original vocal in, and then I pitch corrected the vocal to be a completely different melody. So it was a harmony. And then I also added that same vocal again, but one that was separated in time between the right and the left headphone channel. And so it sounds like it's wider. So if you listen to that harmony vocal that I'm talking about alone, it sounds pretty bad, but it sounds pretty good when you combine with the vocal. So here's what it sounds like just alone.
Tell me now, am I too late? Or did you shut the door? All I want is to.
Right, so that's pretty rough, but if you combine that with the main vocal.
Tell me now, am I too late? Or did you shut the door? All I want is to go back to what we were before.
And it's not so bad. So the entire thing for the bridge.
Tell me now, am I too late? Or did you shut the door? All I want is to go back to what we were before.
So, oh, this I'll might as well show you this too. I put a little string section in the bridge, so the bridge sounds like this.
But you made such a mess.
And the string section's so quiet, but it sounds so good. And I have this music box playing the melody. And that is the insight into my Orono track. Everything, like I said, everything else pretty basic. Nothing that fancy about the bass lines or anything. Kick drums, percussion, some drum fills. Oh, actually, okay. I know I keep saying that I'm gonna be done, but I want to show you some of these drum fills because I basically, to get a drum fill that fit really well, and I haven't done this in any other song yet because I'm just way too lazy to do it, is basically took a couple of different drum samples. If you can see my screen, you can see how chopped up it is, and put them all together. And so it sounds like this when you play just the drum fill. So it doesn't sound amazing when you're just listening to that, but with the context of the song, it sounds pretty good. So anyways, yes, thank you so much for checking this out. I really appreciate you listening to my podcast episode with DJ Coffee Talk, and I appreciate you watching this too. I hope you really enjoy my music and have an awesome week.